Hey guys, Swoggle here. You are watching a very, very special episode of Too Late to Sleep, focusing on celebrities being involved in wrestling. Wait, is this about guest GMs? No, not doing it, Tramp. You're on your own.
Well, screw you too, Swoggle. I'm canceling that check. See if you get paid. Yeah. Alright. Alright, so we are talking about celebrities in wrestling with a special focus on the guest GM era. But that's not where celebrities in wrestling started. Going back to the old days, it was always something where if you could draw somebody in that had nothing to do with wrestling, that somebody might want to come to the show to see, they would do it. Jane Mansfield was involved in a couple wrestling shows, because if you can get Jane Mansfield to the show, maybe you can get this guy that doesn't care about Gorgeous George or the Wrestling Beetle to come see Jane Mansfield, and maybe while he's there, he'll like the show. With WWE, it really kind of hit everything with the rock and wrestling connection back in the early 80s. This was largely Cyndi Lauper being a part of it. She was working with Lou Albano. He was her father in one of her music videos. They did the whole cross-promotion thing. Roddy Piper broke a gold record over Lou Albano's head, and that was really kind of the start of the modern age of wrestling and celebrities. At WrestleMania, you had Mr. T come in and fight. Mr. T obviously was a big star at the time. He had been in the Rocky movies. He was Clubber Lang. He was on the A-Team, a hugely popular show at the time. This was a guy with some star power. So even from the very first WrestleMania, they were bringing celebrities in not just as window dressing, but as the actual wrestling talent. So whenever you see something like Floyd Mayweather coming in to fight Big Show, this is something that's been going on from day one of the modern era of wrestling. Now, if you're a more recent fan who hasn't been watching a while, you may only know the current GMs as the authority figures. You've got Shane McMahon and Stephanie McMahon on SmackDown and Raw. You've got, as their second commands, you've got Daniel Bryan and Kurt Angle. And before Kurt Angle, there's Mick Foley. These may be the only people you know, but authority figures through different names, sometimes commissioner, sometimes the general manager, sometimes the president, whatever it is, they've been a part of WWE for a long time. The first main on-screen authority figure was Jack Tunney, who was actually a Canadian promoter. And when WWE bought out his territory, they gave him the position as the on-screen authority figure. And he would be the one who would actually make the matches. He wasn't a week-to-week guy. He would really only come in for the big storylines, really. And after a while, he kind of got phased out. And they went through a number of different people. Gorilla Monsoon took over. He got injured in a storyline and was replaced with Roddy Piper. Sergeant Slaughter came in afterwards. And you ended up having all these different authority figures when Vince McMahon finally outed himself as the actual promoter behind WWE, as opposed to the on-screen role he had given himself as the announcer for so many years. He took over as the authority figure, but eventually he lost that in storyline terms. And we had guys like Mick Foley, Steve Austin, a few different guys ended up stealing it from him. Shawn Michaels at one point. But eventually, during the original brand split, Raw and SmackDown each had a different general manager running them. SmackDown stayed fairly consistent with Teddy Long running it for quite a while. It was originally Stephanie McMahon, but after a few different road bumps, they got to Teddy Long, and he held on to that title for a while. Raw, on the other hand, had a bunch of different authority figures, starting off with Eric Bischoff, and eventually they got to the point where Vince McMahon, in storyline terms, basically said, screw it, we're just going to have a different general manager every single week. And it would end up being a guest host. Sometimes this would be a returning star. Batista came back for one episode. You had, I think, Sergeant Slaughter coming in one episode. Dusty Rhodes. So sometimes it would be people that actually had some kind of ties, either present or recent history, to do with WWE, who knew what they were doing. But more often than not, it ended up being a celebrity. And Raw ended up becoming part of the press tour for these celebrities as they were promoting things. The problem with celebrities is a lot of times they don't know the product. It is very different getting up in front of a wrestling crowd and trying to sell whatever it is than it is if you are going on Good Morning America or The Tonight Show and trying to sell your product. If you have a movie coming out and you go on to Good Morning America, there might be 3 producers watching, and they're not going to say a word. If you go on The Tonight Show, you're going to have about 100 people in the audience, and they've got an applause sign telling them when to laugh. It's a great crowd. They came to see you. You are the big draw. But at a wrestling show, you're usually not the big draw. It's not that way anymore, despite the idea that you're going to draw in more eyeballs. You're not doing it in person. You might get somebody to turn on the TV, but you're not drawing anybody to that stadium to pay $25 to $50 to a couple $100 for the front row to come see you. It just doesn't work that way, and that crowd will usually be very, very hostile towards you. And if you don't expect that, and you don't know how to deal with that, they are going to run over you. One of the best examples is Jeremy Piven and Ken Jeong. Now, Ken Jeong was not as big a star at the time as he is now. This was before Community started. He was best known at the time for the Hangover movies. But he was going to have a larger role in the Jeremy Piven movie, The Goods. And this was Jeremy Piven's big starring role coming out of Entourage after that series ended. So, to promote it, Ken Jeong and Jeremy Piven came to Raw, and they each embodied one of 2 out of 4 categories we're going to talk about. And I want to start with just the celebrities that don't care. Jeremy Piven did not want to be there at all.
When all you guys go back to LA, your home turf, and if you lose, we will ban you from the Summerfest.
He'll be banned from SummerSlam is what you're saying.
SummerSlam.
SummerSlam now. So wait a second.
And Summerfest, whatever that is.
Yeah, he didn't know the name of the show that he was supposed to promote in his speech. He didn't know who the wrestlers were. This is stuff that they obviously went over with him. He just didn't care. He didn't care enough to learn, and it came across. And people hated him. The other people that really kind of came to this I don't care feeling would be Kathy Lee and Hoda Kotb.
No way. Hey, what the hell? That was a bottle to the booty. See this? Oh no! Oh no! Kathy Lee! Oh!
Yeah, so they just came out and kind of played up their morning show drunk MILF personas, and nobody really cared because they didn't seem like they knew what they were doing. They came out with Adam Rose. They didn't really promote This was supposed to be part of a Susan B. Komen tie-in, and they really didn't do anything to promote that. They just came out and didn't even drink wine. They just had glasses and bottles that were obviously stooged, that they just broke over each other in what neither of them attempted to make look like it hurt. So it was clear what was going on. I mean, we've seen breakaway glass used to much better effect. Chris Jericho used it in his feud with CM Punk. This just wasn't that. This was just, oh, look, we've got fake glass. Let's break it on each other. But it was awful. The crowd hated it. And it was awful. But now getting back to Ken Jeong, because now we're going to talk about the people that don't seem to know the product, but want to try too hard. They seem to have this idea in their mind about what wrestling is, and they don't care what it actually is. They just want to steer into this idea of this over-the-top, bouncing on trampolines crap. And this really kind of played into Ken Jeong in the main event of his show, where he comes off the top rope jumping at John Cena. I mean, clearly this was something that was supposed to happen, but it just didn't work well, because nobody bought into Ken Jeong being this guy. He tried to play a wrestler when he didn't know what a wrestler was, even though he was in the ring with wrestlers who weren't acting like he was. And this is the tryhards. Another example would be Chris Pontius and Steve-O from Jackass. They were promoting one of the Jackass films, and they had a segment with Umaga.
Steve-O laughing at Chris. Well, his sidekick. They think it's funny when... Sometimes they think it's funny when each other gets hurt.
And you can see this is something where it just really looks like they had this idea that wrestling was bouncing around on a trampoline. You see Steve-O just not taking it seriously, even though he's getting beaten up. You know, getting up and laughing instead of selling the damn beating. And he ended up taking a few stiff shots from Umaga because he didn't care. He was supposed to be laying on the ground, you know, writhing in pain, and instead he's laughing at Pontius for doing what Pontius is supposed to do. You know, the crowd hated it, and it ended up being awful. Now, it's not always bad, though. There are occasions where people who actually are wrestling fans end up in a position on wrestling. And even that doesn't always go great. Take Seth Green. No, really, after that you can take him. Seth Green is a wrestling fan, lifelong wrestling fan, friend of some of the wrestlers backstage, and he got to do this to promote Robot Chicken, and he just got thrown out there in a match. I don't know if they asked him to be in one or he asked to be in one, but for whatever reason, he ended up in the match, and that is the single worst thing you can do as a non-wrestler. You put yourself in the ring in a match, and you lose all credibility. Well, actually, you don't lose it because you never had it in the first place, and the fans hate it. Why do they hate it? Because once upon a time, a non-wrestler celebrity won the WCW Championship. Oh, here he is.
Who better to kick off a show commemorating the very best in the industry than one of the greatest WCW heavyweight champions of all time?
This guy's a jerk.
No, really.
Oh, he's good.
I was the world heavyweight champion.
Yeah, that's former WCW champion David Arquette. And as he pointed out, he was the WCW champion. Now, if you have not been following wrestling that long, basically what happened was he was in a movie called Ready to Rumble. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix or not. Check it out sometime. It was produced by WCW and used a lot of their wrestlers. And he played one of two wrestling fans, with Scott Kahn as the other. And they end up witnessing their favorite wrestler get screwed out of the championship. And they don't seem to realize that wrestling is staged, even though this one incident isn't. You know, this is one where the promoter conspired with the wrestler that beat him. The champion thought he was going to keep the belt, and it was a lot like the Montreal Screwjob that happened in WWE a few years earlier. So anyway, they go on this journey for the champion to redeem himself, and he's the big star in the movie. And to promote the movie, they had him on WCW Nitro, their key flagship show at the time. And they actually make him the champion. And he, to his credit, has said, "This is a bad idea. I'll do it if you insist, but I really don't think this is a great idea. The fans are going to hate it." And Vince Russo, who was the head writer at the time, said, "It is a great idea. Go on out there and do it." And the guy who was a fan all of his life knew. And the guy who was the writer didn't. And the fans hated it. And that's why when he came back, he kind of played up the heel persona. When he did it, he knew that people were going to hate him. But they still put him in the match at the end. Now this worked because he knew they were going to hate him, and they used that to his advantage. One time it didn't work so well was Will Sasso, who is another guy who has long been a fan. When they did the Three Stooges film a few years ago, trying to relaunch the franchise, he played Curly. And it was him, Chris Diamantopoulos, who you may know from Silicon Valley, and Sean Pierce, who had already been famous at the time from the Will and Grace TV show, were the Three Stooges. Chris Diamantopoulos was Mo, Sean Pierce was Larry, and as I said, Will Sasso was Curly. They came out to do a promotion for the movie, and Will Sasso came out in character as Curly as Hulk Hogan. The crowd hated it. Just crapped on it. They knew it was coming and set up a confrontation with Kane. No reason for Kane to be out there, except that they knew the crowd was going to hate it.
Oh no! Oh, Curly! The joke's on you!
It irritated me a little bit because I know Will Sasso is a fan, because I know Will Sasso has worked on this impression of Hulk Hogan, because he has done stuff like this in the past. When he was on Mad TV, he had a segment with Bret Hart where he got beat up, and he actually showed up on Mad TV, on WCW Nitro, to promote Mad TV in a match where he got beat up some more by Bret Hart. But this actually wasn't even his first time in WWE, because he showed up as part of a feud between Chris Jericho and Steve Austin.
Now, you won't ever do this again, right? You promise? You have your word? Cross your heart? Hope to die? Stick 1,000 needles right in your little eye? We got a deal? Thank you.
And that people didn't crap on, because he wasn't there to promote anything. He wasn't out there taking up TV time. He was there as part of a segment that had already started with a wrestler to promote the feud. He wasn't there as a star. He was there to serve the story. And the story was Chris Jericho getting under the skin of Steve Austin. And even though half the crowd may not have known who Will Sasso was, they don't watch Mad TV, they don't watch Christopher Guest movies, whatever, they didn't have to know who he was to know that he was this guy mocking Steve Austin, and the skit worked just on that basis. So sometimes when you have the true fans, they know what's going to work, and they know what's not going to work, and they still get put in these positions where they know it's not going to work. And sometimes when you get them in a position where they think it's going to work, it ends up working well. But the last category we're going to talk about, my personal favorite, these are what I call the gamers. These are the guys that are game for anything. They might not like wrestling. It doesn't matter, because they're there to promote something, and they're professionals, and they're going to take it seriously. One of the best loved is Bob Barker. I couldn't tell you if Bob Barker has ever watched an episode of Raw. I don't know if he knew the name of a single wrestler before coming in, but he was there to promote his book. He had just left The Price is Right, I think, a year earlier. This was his first television appearance since then. But he had written his autobiography, and to promote it, he came on to do a segment called The Price is Raw. And he stood up in the face of Chris Jericho, and it helped that he kind of had this character built up from Happy Gilmore, where he was kind of respected as a tough guy, even though he didn't have to act tough. You know, all he did was just do his shtick from The Price is Right, and not back down when somebody got in his face. And it worked. People loved it. It was the dumbest bit. Bad comedy. IRS, as much as I love him, I loved him as a wrestler. It's just so weird to see him pop back up out of nowhere for this weird comedy sketch when they could have used a current wrestler instead, but they didn't. It was weird. But people loved it because it felt so authentic. Bob Barker wasn't doing anything he shouldn't be. He was hosting a game show that was a parody of the game show that he hosted for decades.
And I am one half.
One.
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
I heard the number one. That's your bid. One. Get off the stage. Down there.
And people loved it. And then you take a look at Mark Cuban, who a couple months later showed up. I believe they were in Dallas, and they were probably using his arena, so he was the guest host, and he moderated a debate. I have no idea why they had to frame it as one, but he moderated a debate between John Cena and Sheamus. And this was Sheamus leading up to his first ever title win. Spoilers, he would go on to take the title. And it was going to be a tables match at TLC. So to promote it, he put Mark Cuban through a table.
No, wait a minute. No. Don't do it, Sheamus. Don't do it, Sheamus! Oh, God.
Now, as with Bob Barker, I couldn't tell you if Mark Cuban knew who Sheamus was going in. I couldn't tell you how long he's been watching wrestling, if he ever watched before. I know he had appeared once before where he took an RKO. But Mark Cuban said, if you put me on Raw, you can put me through a table. And people respect that, because that is a man who is willing to put himself, his physical well-being, on the line in the hands of an experienced professional, because it will serve the story. It says Sheamus is this dangerous. It shows this side of the wrestler that wasn't always going to be seen before. We saw it more recently with Kevin Owens doing it to MGK during his feud with John Cena. MGK was supposed to be John Cena's friend. Don't know if that's true. But MGK said, if you're going to let me perform my song on Raw, which people don't love, then you can put me through a table, which people love. People love seeing celebrities get hurt, and they will believe that they get hurt if they go through a table. And it works. It works so damn well. And we see so often that they bring these celebrities on and they don't know what to do with them. They don't just let them be themselves. People loved when the Muppets were on, because the Muppets, as childish as they may be, were just doing Muppet stuff. Now, they don't always love the stuff with the potion. That was a little bit out there. Go watch it. I'm not going to throw the clip up because it was kind of weird and it's hard to frame in the time we have. But they don't love everything about the Muppets because they kind of got involved in a match they shouldn't. But they love that they were just there, not ruining the show. They just did their own thing and then got out of the way for the most part. And that's what a celebrity should be doing. Stay in your lane. To quote another celebrity appearance, stay in your lane and don't make the show about you. Or if you do, make it about you in service of the wrestlers. It's something that they're still working on understanding. Alright, I want to thank you for checking this out. I really didn't have a whole lot to say about this. I just kind of wanted to look at the celebrity experience in WWE. I think it's so weird, and I just wanted to try and break them down into 4 categories. You know, the true fans, the gamers, the tryhards, and the don't cares, and just kind of look at what does work and what doesn't. And I thank you for watching. I want to thank Swoggle for filming the intro for me. He's a great guy. Check him out wherever you can. Follow him on Twitter. Check out any of his matches. The guy's got... if you can track down his matches post WWE, please do. He's gotten a chance to kind of stretch out a little bit more and do stuff that he wasn't able to do in his role in WWE. Follow him on Twitter, all that stuff. Thank you again for checking this out. I love you, Trampions. Cheers.